This episode is brought to you by AutoFi.
If people fall in love with you, they'll buy a car from you.
All right, gang, on this episode of the Dealer Playbook Podcast, I'm sitting down with the CEO of the Rohrman Automotive Group. Ryan Rohrman joins me. We're going to talk about legacy and how you can marry that to hiring, recruiting, retention, and something about a 177,000 square foot Honda store. Stay tuned. Ryan, thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook Podcast.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on your show.
I've consumed a lot of your interviews now at this point, and I'm excited to get into this one. Most people who have followed the show for a while know that I usually am wearing what they think is some sort of sports ring. It's actually a family crest ring.
Cool.
It has the Cirillo family crest on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know if it's the Italian in me, whatever it is, but family is so important. And so as I've listened to a lot of the conversations that you've had, it's clear that family legacy is something that's near and dear to you. I want to dig into that a little bit because we know that the auto industry is a family business. By and large, most dealerships say family owned and operated somewhere on their website. But as I watched an interview on Asodu, where you're talking about your grandfather and the legacy about your grandfather. And I'm like, is this the first time I've ever shed tear while watching automotive content? Something resonated there. And I thought, man, I have to talk to you about this. First and foremost, what was it like for you growing up and kind of getting to the point that you're at now as CEO, being able to learn from a second and a first generation Rohrman?
Yeah, I love that question because my upbringing probably doesn't align with most third gen dealer kids, I would probably say. So in the early 90s, my dad actually left my grandfather. And at that time, my grandfather my grandfather started in 1963. In 68 is when he franchised with Toyota. And that was his first new car franchise. So he was pretty established by the 90s. So my dad left him, and my dad started buy here, pay here lot, which he grew that to 4. And so I grew up as I was like 13, 14 years old by that time. So I was a lot boy. I mean, I had my first car accident actually when I was 14 years old. I was too afraid I've never told this story before, but I was too afraid to pull onto the road to pull back into the parking lot. So I tried to back the car in between 2 other cars, and it did not turn out well. So that whole summer was working towards the body damage I caused on that. But yeah, so I grew up on a buy here, pay here lot. And at that time, I never sold any cars. I was cleaning cars, and both of my parents they were all about this image of the used car lot and to keep it clean. So like, I'm the oldest of 4. So I have 3 younger brothers. So, after church on Sundays, we'd be going over to Dad's lot, and we'd be pulling weeds, picking up cigarette butts, all that kind of stuff. So I still remember my dad, he'd pay us 1 penny for every cigarette butt that we'd pick up. So that was another source of income there. But anyway, so fast forward, my next job in automotive was in a body shop, unrelated to my dad. So I worked in a body shop, and I did a lot of prepping for paint work, which was super fun. They gave me a torch and basically said, hey, you got to get that brush guard out of the engine. And so it was fun. So I did that for 2 summers. And then I started turning wrenches at a Texaco station. And so in 2000, we moved away from Indiana, where my grandfather started and where my dad was at. And I went to high school in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So about 8 hours north of where I grew up. And so that's where I did the body shop experience. And that's where I started turning wrenches at this Texaco station. So I would do on average 18 to 22 oil changes a day. And so I did that for probably a couple of years. So all that to be said is I went to college shortly after that, and I went to college thinking I'm not going to be in the car business. So my experience up to that point was, buy here, pay here lot, body shop, and turning wrenches. And so I was a biochem major at a small school in St. Paul, Minnesota, Bethel University. And that's when, so up until that point, my grandfather and I had a good relationship. Um, but it was then when we became close. So that's when he really, like, my grandfather was the epitome of a salesman. I mean, it was natural. He couldn't turn it off. He never tried. It just was who he was. It just came out of him. And so I think it's probably because my age. I was getting a little bit older. So
Right.
I was 20. I was almost 21 by that time, and he was all over me. So, I told the story with the Sodu guys, but in my dorm room, we still had the phone with the cord on it. And, it started ringing because I stopped picking my cell phone up, and it was my grandpa. And, he wanted me to come sell cars. He goes, Rye, I want you to come sell new cars with me. And I was reluctant. And so finally it got to the point where it was almost more annoying that he would not stop asking me the same question. Yeah. And so I said, fine, I'll do it. I'm coming. And he stopped calling me after that. After he got the commitment, he knew he had me. So that was the summer of 2005. And so that's when I started selling cars at Schaumburg Honda. And I loved it. I fell in love with it. It was unlike any experience that I had done in auto up until that time. I mean, all the auto experience I had until then really helped me for sure. Yeah. But it was a new experience. It was, the new car industry is so different than other automotive industry. I wouldn't say it's harder or easier or anything like that. It's a different animal. And I fell in love with that. So the summer of 2005 and the summer of 2006, I lived with my grandpa. I lived in his basement, and he did not like me home if the dealership was open. So, which was fine with me. I had nothing else to do. I didn't grow up in Chicago. So I worked, really past close because, in the early 2000s, the car business was rocking.
Right.
The store that I was at, we were selling 300 new cars a month and about 150, 160 used cars a month. So we were busy. And in Schaumburg, which is a nice suburb of Chicago, about 19 miles northwest, we'd be busy till 10 or 11 o'clock. Whoa. I'd say 10 o'clock almost every night. And it'd go past that. The only time we had in the state of Illinois and Indiana, you cannot be open on Sunday. So we had to close Saturday night at 11:59. You cannot conduct business. But he would wait up for me without fail almost every night. Because my average time I'd get home is probably 10:30. And, he'd wait up for me and he'd go, right. And because I'd walk through the kitchen downstairs to my bedroom, I was exhausted. Because even in those days, most of the staff wore polos and pants, but he wanted me in a shirt and tie. So it was hot during the summer. So I had a shirt and tie on, getting in and out of these cars, the cars get to 110 degrees sitting on the blacktop. And, it was, right. I was exhausted by the end of the day. And, he'd wait up for me and he'd go, how'd it go today? And without fail, we'd break down every single customer that I had, whether I sold a car or I didn't. And, I think anyone who really knew my grandfather, he was hilarious. Like, the dude just, he was so funny. He just make you laugh. And his laugh was contagious. So his big belly laugh, and, but he cared so much. Like, he had such a big heart for people. And so he really enjoyed it, but we'd break it down and be like, oh, you should try this next time. Or you might've gone too fast, because I still remember my very first day that I went to work at Schaumburg Honda. I was nervous, and he could tell I was nervous. And, he never, like, I would say my grandfather trained me, but it's not like training, it wasn't like, well, here's a objection, or you got to overcome it. He said, hey, Rye, if people fall in love with you, they'll buy a car from you. And
Yeah.
that's what he said to me as I left his house. And I was 21 and I was like, great. what does that mean? But it's true to this day, and that was some of the best advice he'd given me up until that point, is just to really, really care about my customer and really in a way to fall in love with them, to really like the goal for me is not to really sell a car. It's to get to know them to the point where I can help meet a need that they have. And if that's a car, phenomenal. That's my job. And that's how you get the people who come back and be like, hey, Ryan, I'm here for my second one. And it's like, great. Because it wasn't really a transaction. The transaction happens, but it's more than that. It's an experience, right? And the experience is because the connection was made, and it's enjoyable on both sides. So, I got to really know him really well. Those, 2005 and 2006, we spent a ton of time together, and he really poured into me just what it looks like to be a car guy. And, it's hard work, but man, it's fun. It's when to some, another thing my grandfather, said a lot, a lot of people said, man, Bob, you work all the time. And he goes, me, I haven't worked a day in my life, and I honestly, that was not a sales pitch. I really believe that he believed that, he loved what he did so much that it wasn't really work. He loved people. And yeah, so I got to know him really well. And the business side of it, through those years. And then it just kind of took off from there. He would have never, I don't think he ever would have said he was like a mentor to me or he mentored me or anything like that. But he was that for me, because, even when I got my first GM opportunity, I was 28, and, he was all over me again, and he was like, let's talk through it. What are you doing? What are you working on? That probably won't work, but you can try it if you want, and so looking back at it now, I can see what he was doing. He never wanted to tell me what to do,
Yeah.
but he wanted to give me enough guidance and insight of like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And so that really connected us at a deep level.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Dealer Playbook. And before we hop back in, I want to thank today's sponsor, AutoFi. AutoFi helps dealers like you sell smarter, not harder, on your dealership website and now in your showroom too. AutoFi solves the everyday problems dealers actually face, like bottlenecks at the sales desk, customer distrust, and decision overload. Their all-new showroom solution includes deal estimation, desking, lender routing, and an F&I menu, all in one powerful platform. Dealerships with AutoFi sell cars faster, with higher satisfaction, and more profit. In fact, dealers make an average of $641 higher back-end PVR on AutoFi deals versus their non-AutoFi deals. Go to autofi.com/dealer playbook and start selling smarter today. All right, let's hop back into this episode. In those moments, because I've written down the word coaching probably 6 times as I'm listening to you speak. Even in something as small as, okay, yeah, they might be wearing polos and khakis. You're in a white shirt and a tie. That there's certain levels of coaching here. Bring me into those moments, though. A younger Ryan Rohrman. Were there moments where you were like, Grandpa, please stop talking to me?
Oh, yeah.
And my goal here is to help those listening understand in the moments, there's all sorts of things, emotions and feelings and probably frustration and leave me alone and all of these things, right? It's hindsight. That's 2020. Bring me into some of those moments where you were just like, can I just please go to bed?
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, it's a great question because I think, looking back at, like, to this day, I won't walk into a dealership without a suit on. I can't. I mean, I can't do it. and it's because of my grandfather. And so to answer your question, yeah, there was times I was exhausted, but and I wanted to go to bed, and I didn't want to talk about this anymore because I had a hard day. I talked to 5 customers. I didn't sell a car. I really didn't want to be told what I needed to work on, on those ones, But he was so consistent. He was really consistent to the point of we never had so when he needed to have a tough talk with you, he was very good at that. But so I'm not talking about when he needed to have that tough talk. When we were just having our talks, they were always fun. And he just knew whether I took 5 ups and didn't get anything, or I took 4 and I sold 3. I didn't go to bed thinking I was a stud on that day, just like I didn't go to bed thinking I sucked on the other day. I went to bed thinking there's more opportunity. I can't do what everyone else does if I want different results. So that was a big thing for him. Like even on the dressing, he's like, well, wouldn't you feel weird if your customer was dressed up more than you? And at the time, I probably would have said, well, not really. But for whatever reason, he ingrained that into me. And that's how I feel today. You can be like, in my mind, like if you're in a suit, great. I'd love to do business with however you're dressed. But I tell you what, if you're in tank top, flip flops, sports shorts, I'm good to go too. And it's just because it's the professionalism that he really established down into it. I think a side effect of the auto business today is how many people take it as serious as a profession. And you can really tell when they do, right? And it doesn't mean you got to wear a suit, but man, that is one way you can tell someone takes it serious though, to some extent. So I do think, he established this level of professionalism in me that I did not see him doing. But even as I think back of our, his one day, it's so hot out in the summer times with a shirt and tie on, and my shirt collar started to yellow out a little bit. And so his wife at the time took me out on a Sunday afternoon, and she bought me some new shirts, and I went to pay for it, and she goes, "Oh no, I'll pay for it." And I was like, "Are you sure? Grandpa might not like that." And she looked at me, she goes, "He asked me to do this." And I was like, okay, all right. So, Grandpa didn't want to tell me to go get new white shirts. He didn't want me to pay for my own white shirts. So he sent his wife out to take me. But it was just like, it was that level of professionalism, and he was the epitome of that. Like he was okay with me not wearing a tie if I had a suit on. Yeah. But he had a suit and tie everywhere he went. The only time he didn't was Sunday afternoons. He wears slacks and a polo or something like that. But besides that, he was.
There's something I love this because I feel like this is very much conversations I feel like I have with my children regularly, and it seems like you're in the same boat, which is instilling in them that you can't stand apart by standing in line.
That's right.
You can't stand up and lie down at the same time. And it's the small things compounded. It's the white shirt and tie when everyone else is wearing a polo, not in a spirit of, oh, I'm just going to be different for the sake of being different. But this understanding that your grandfather had that he's passed on to you, which is, well, I'm not doing it for others. I'm doing it for me. I understand my line with which I would desire to stand on. And that's the only thing that matters. I mean, it makes me chuckle as I think about this. Back one of my first jobs in sales was actually at Best Buy.
Okay.
And, going to college in Best Buy, selling appliances, doing all those sorts of things. And I showed up. I mean, they had their same uniform, and it was the blue shirt with the khaki pants or whatever. And I would show up wearing a tie, and I would get hazed.
For
Oh,
sure.
look, it's really, yeah. And then it only took a little bit of time before they realized that customers would gravitate towards me.
100%.
I say Best Buy. It was actually a company called Future Shop, which is now Best Buy. I grew up in Canada, and it was a commission. It was a commission sales floor. It was not
Okay.
what Best Buy is today. So
Sure.
when they saw the youngest salesperson in Canada at the time, I was 17 years old, close in $2,000 and $3,000 commission days, and they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Boy, I tell you, dude, it only took 4 or 5 days before that entire sales floor was wearing shirt and tie.
They're all looking like, yeah, exactly.
Every single one of them. In fact, I was sitting there teaching them how to do a full Windsor
That's
and put it,
amazing.
pull it down to put a dimple in it. Cause I'm
Yes.
like, you got to have a dimple in the
Yeah.
tie.
Yes.
Maybe think about a tie clip. I'm just saying,
That's right. Oh yeah.
but it's this, what I'm hearing you say is line upon line, this installation of an operating system. Here's our mode of operation. Here's how we stand out. Here's how we present ourselves with dignity and poise and professionalism.
Right.
And we're not saying you have to or that we think differently of you. We're saying we have to for us. And I think that is just something that lacks in the world today, where everyone's looking for the easy way out. They're looking for the shortcut. Your grandfathers taught you shortcuts lead to long cuts.
Right.
But I love what you said as well about I'm getting a sense of his leadership style. You're saying words like consistency. I want to now shine a spotlight on you, because I've heard such tremendous things. And I mean, it's no secret that you are now under your direction. You are leading this group to just astronomical heights and achieving success, which I congratulate you for. I think it's tremendous. I look back at this experience you've shared from oil and lube places, prepping paint, um, um, turning wrenches. As you look back now, how do you feel the experience up to this point, not just on the sales side, but also really on the fixed side, has shaped your understanding of how to get employees to grow and buy in and deepen their conviction that they're showing up and making a difference each day?
Yeah, I think, man, I could talk on that question for a long time. But I think, like a couple things. Number one thing it taught me was the value of people. And so, all those different jobs that I've had, even up to this one, you know, I, I really don't like taking credit for stuff at all, because it's not about me. I mean, the stuff that we do as a group, it's done because we have 1,500 people all doing it at the same time. Like, if I have to be that person that takes the brunt when I make a bad decision and we have a failure, which we do, it's like I got to pivot. Like, I didn't like that. I'll do that. But when we have success, I mean, it's not my success; it's our success. And I I don't think enough time can be spent on the value of, it doesn't, it takes a tribe to do what we're doing, and it's just funny. The one thing where my grandpa and I differed in our leadership was our corporate structure. And I don't know, I never really got a chance to talk to him why he never established one. But since I took over the group in 2018, and I tried to do it his way for the first 18 months. And it worked. It was a lot of work. Like, I was in hotel rooms more than my bed, just because of the span of the auto group. And I
Sure.
was in every store every month, holding hours of meetings and goal setting, KPIs. This is what we want, and I did that. And I shouldn't say I did it. I had two other people that were right alongside me that whole way.
Yeah.
But we did that for 18 months, and I looked at them and I was like, there's a better way. Um, this can't be as good as it can get. you know? And so that's when I started hiring some director level people. And guess what? It got better. And again, the power of people. I mean, my expenses went up, right? I took and I added 15 people over probably 3 years that now sit between me and the GM, and we've made more net every year since that time. And irregardless, before COVID, during COVID, after COVID, it's that statement is still true, and it's the power of people, because I couldn't do it by myself, or I could, but I wasn't getting the best product.
Mm.
I needed I needed a team that supported the vision and were there more consistently. And the relationship was stronger because, I mean, I had to go at the end of a meeting because I had another meeting and another meeting. And it's just, that's not, it wasn't an effective leadership style. You know, I love one thing, one book I love is the Jim Collins book, Good to Great, you know, and he talks about like the level 3, level 4, level 5 leader.
Yeah.
And I love that, you know, and you know, I think if you're not striving to be a level 5 leader, I wouldn't understand your mindset if
Right.
you're not
Sure.
striving to be that, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm striving to do that, and I know for that to happen, one of the things that has to be true is it's not about me. It's about the mission and the vision of who we are. We like to say internally, we are Rohrman, and it means something to people though. Like, you know, like the trickle down effect is a real thing and it is hard, right? So like the weakness of a really good meeting is you have a great meeting with your like executive team and everyone's pumped up and it doesn't go anywhere because it the trickle down effect, how do the people that need to hear what we talked about get the information? And so I think holding effective training and holding effective meetings, you've got to bypass some of those levels and you have to get in front of your staff. But when we say we are Rohrman, the one thing that I can honestly say is that if anyone's been with us for a minimum of 60 days, they know what that statement means. They know our purpose statement and they know our core values. And they know that all that stuff matters. And it matters from the top down, you know. And so, you know, the one thing that I think my grandfather really instilled into me is, you know, words are powerful, but actions are more powerful. So, you know, the best form of leadership is to do what you want people to do and have them see you do that. You can tell someone to do it as much as you want, but when they see you do it, you know, I when I got the ability to run. I was a general manager of Schaumburg Honda for 5 years, big store. You know, man, my team was awesome. We had so much fun during that 5 year span, and you know, the way that I didn't micromanage, but kept myself in every car deal was I appraised almost every car. I just loved it. I loved used cars. I grew up doing it, so I appraised every car. Rarely penciled a deal as a general manager, but I praised them all. And you know, I'd pick trash up. You know, I'd pick, and then, but you know what? After doing that for like 30 days, there was never trash outside. Like I never asked anyone to pick the trash up. It's just my salespeople would run out and pick it up before I saw it. You know, and I never said anything. I'd pick it up, I'd put it in my pocket, I'd put it in the trash, and
I
I'd
love it.
keep going. You know, and it's like, but you know what? I got that from my grandpa. Like I didn't come up with that. You know, it's
Right.
I saw him do that. You know, and I got to tell you the story because it's kind of in line with it. You'll think this is a riot. So the Toyota store in Oak Brook always used to put pennies on the floor on the pavement by his car, and without fail, he'd pick them up and put it in his pocket. And so one day after he picked them up, he walks us out the store. He goes, "Guys, I just want you to know, I know what you're doing, and I'll continue to take your money as long as you put it on the pavement." You know, it's just like it's what he did. You know, so like if he saw something, he picked it up. You know, so
I love it.
yeah.
I love it. There's so, I wish we had 3 hours, and I'm not going to do that to you, but I've got one last question, but then I have to talk about this Honda store because it's blowing my mind. But along these lines, going from doing the work, I think a lot of this will resonate with a lot of people. I posted on Facebook this morning, or on my social this morning, this inner battle I have, as a CEO of my businesses, and we've got 4 or 5 different projects on the go, and going from a family startup. I mean, this is why your story just is so deeply resonant with me. An off the boat Italian grandfather, entrepreneur father. Me. There's this element of, okay, well, you start as a startup and you're doing all the jobs.
Yep.
And you have to develop skills and abilities that you never thought you would have to develop. And you learn painful lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point, to your point, you start hiring people, you bring more people onto your team. And I think dealers, even, single or double or small groups, might understand this. At some point, your work as the CEO changes. Yes, you're still demonstrating. Like, I love what you say. You were still in the work appraising every vehicle as a general manager. You still were involved. And I think about this. I feel involved, but there's this very inner battle of, gosh, do I feel sometimes I just need to do it myself?
Yeah.
And I know there's dealers that we talk to all the time that are like, boy, how do you create because you said it's all about people.
Yeah.
This thing where, oh gosh, like my workload has changed, but I am so deeply concerned about making sure that they can carry the torch and do the things. I mean, what does it look like where maybe you have an off month and you go, man, I got to get to store number 6.
Yeah.
And maybe I got to roll up my sleeves into it. How do you reconcile maybe that conflict for yourself as your roles evolved?
Yeah, I think so. I love this question because I think it's something that I would say is always a work in process for me on this one, because I love the car business, but I also know that at some level I can be the worst thing for the car business if I try to do what you're saying. Like, the worst thing for me to do, in my 2 cents, is to go into a store that's had a tough month and be a cannonball of a personality and then disrupt everything. And so, now on the same token, though, there are times where that needs to happen. So I think maybe the question is, what have I found is important to look at, so that I can make an educated decision on my day-to-day actions? Because there's a really big difference if I tell a GM to go hold a meeting about service policy penetration. Okay. Small meeting, like GM should have a meeting probably almost every day. Bigger meeting if I ask one of my directors of operations to go in and have a meeting at that store about their service policy penetration. It's a whole nother thing when I go to their store and I say, guys, get in the conference room. We're going to have a conversation on service policy penetration. Now, here's the thing. All 3 of us might say the same exact thing, but it's to be taken at 3 different levels. So, it's all about how to utilize the power that you have at the right time. And I think a lot of that is, what are you watching? So, again, I love to read. I ingest multiple books a month. I just love it. And another book that I love is years ago is, I'm trying to remember the exact name on it, but it's I think it's the Infinite Pursuit, or the Simon Sinek book.
Yep.
It's not the Infinite Pursuit, because that's the name of what I created based on his book.
Oh, the Infinite Game.
Infinite Game. Thank you.
Yes.
It's the Infinite Game. So off of that, I love the concept of the Infinite Game, where in life, in work, in business, there's never an end. We are in this ever-changing, ever-evolving competition that has no end. So how do you not get burnt out? How do you keep pressing? How how to press, how light to press, how hard to press, when you press, so that when you can look back over years, you can be like, we grew consistently over time. And growing consistently over time means you're going to have a bad month sometimes. It just is. So,
But
what do you,
overall, you
yes,
still, yeah.
exactly. And so, I have a program called the Infinite Pursuit, and it is just chock full of KPIs of stuff that I track. And so, what makes me jump into a store today is the metrics. And so, I'm fine with a bad month. I really am. I'm not fine with 3 months in a row bad, and I might even have a light conversation of 2 months in a row, you know, but and I make it very known to all the GMs and directors, because I have programs for all of them inside of this program. So every manager has a program under the Infinite Pursuit. So sales managers, finance managers, general managers, my directors, they all have different things. And it's because I also think that if you don't know what my expectations are, that's a lack of leadership from my standpoint. Like,
Hmm.
you need to know you're doing a good job, irregardless if I tell you you are or not. And so I try to be very clear of, this is it. This is how you know. If you want to know, just know if you're hitting these, you're killing it. And I couldn't be happier. And so um, that's how I would answer that question, and that program was not built in a year. That program, oddly enough, another thing my grandfather started, he had this program called Store of the Year. Did not love that program, but I took that program and I adapted it into the Infinite Pursuit. And so that is how I wait. Like, how often am I in your store? Because I think one award I tell GMs is, you're doing great. You don't need to see me. And they're like, but we want to see you. And it's like, okay, fine. I'll come and we'll have a meeting, but it's like, that's just the way, because they're like,
Yeah,
when they see me, they're like, Ryan, I'm, I'm in the Infinite Pursuit this year. I'm just like, man, I know you are. Great job. It's
I love that.
they know, so I think, you know, having a clear expectation, of what success is, and then also when it's lagging, what you should expect from me, because 1 month's fine, but 2 months maybe not, and at a quarter is definitely, we have a problem, and we
Yeah.
have different meetings set up for all those scenarios, of trying to go in there and dissect that. So
Yeah, I love it. And what it is it maintains also accountability.
yeah,
What we typically see in our human nature when we don't understand something, or we're not, to your point, you don't have a thought out system with which you track, is you start blaming everybody else. You say, oh, well, it's our marketing, or it's our, CRM, or we need a new tool, or we need a this
right,
and that. To maintain composure and accountability at the same time, I think is really unique. And obviously for anyone paying attention, um, to take inventory and say, well, but what am I not doing or not doing? What do I believe will move the needle? What behavior or mindset
right.
must I adopt in order to take things to the next level? I think is just a tremendous amount of accountability. So I love that answer. Okay, as we wind down, so many people are going, but did you need the largest Honda store in the world? How does this come together?
Oh man,
I mean, it's the size of an IKEA, for crying out loud. Like,
man. I mean,
what's tell me, bring me into your mindset around this 177,000 square foot store.
it's big. It, you know,
It's big.
it's
It's big.
it's big. At least it feels a little bit better when there's furniture in it. But when we were building this thing, I'd walk in there and I was just thinking, what are we doing? This thing is stupid, But really, the answer to your question is twofold. So I've had this asked to me a couple times, and I like this question because I also like the answer. Um,
Okay.
and the answer is, I didn't build this store. Um, it was the last blueprint that my grandpa did. It's the last one he did, and he started it. So it's not just that I found these on a shelf someplace. Um, he started it in like it stalled out for years. So I want to say he started it in 16 or 17. And so by the time, you know, I took over and we had to re-permit the whole thing. So it was to get it going again took
Yeah.
6 to 8 months just to, hey Honda, do you still like this image? Hey,
Right.
Village of Schaumburg, will you give me a permit for this? And so on and so forth. And building codes changed during the time. So, you know, from 18 to really like middle of 19, it was kind of just getting our ducks in a row to get the project going again. So, really, to answer your question, my grandpa started it. It's what he wanted, and he loved big stores. You know, like we have one of the largest Lexus stores in the country, too, 7 miles north of the Honda store. It's 143,000 square feet, I think. It's huge. I mean, for a Lexus store, I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't. Lexus is great. We love it. But the largest volume Lexus dealer, in the Midwest, you don't need 140,000 square feet. So, you know, my grandpa started it. It was it's what he wanted. Schaumburg Honda, it held a special place in his heart. And so he wanted to build a store that mirrored that, So 1984, he was awarded the Honda Point in Schaumburg from American Honda. And that was his first dealership outside the state of Indiana. So the first brand, the first store that pulled him out of Lafayette, Indiana, was Schaumburg Honda. So there's so much rich history there. I just, it was emotional for me. That night at the grand opening is emotional because I remember my history in the new car auto business. I know my grandpa's story so well because he told them to me so many times. And so many of them were just so instrumental with not just the brand of Honda, but Schaumburg Honda. So to be able to finish that store the way he wanted it, it meant a lot, and that's what he wanted to see going down Gulf Road was that, monster Honda store. So it was really twofold. So he started it. I was able to finish it. Do we need the space? No. I hope we will use that space well, though. I think we will. But it'll be
host weddings there.
Oh yeah, I mean, I met the mayor of Schaumburg. Came up to me. He goes, "Man, this is a nice place." And I said, "Oh, thank you." He goes, "Would you mind if we had some meetings here?" I said, "Absolutely."
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So I was like, "Yeah, go ahead." So they can use our conference room upstairs and do that. So I think it's cool. I mean, it does really fall in line with one of our core value systems of just focusing on customer experience. Like customer experience, I think, is paramount. It's why they're going to come back over and over and over again, especially in your big market towns like Chicago. I think we're around 9 million people in greater Chicago still.
Whoa.
Like you can go to a lot of Honda stores. Why will you come back to my Honda store? I hope it's because your customer experience was awesome. Do you need a building to do that? No, but it helps. And so, I think that'll go far for us at that store. So
I love it. Boy, I've taken pages of notes. The recap here for me is, and here's another one of Simon Sinek's books, Start With Why.
Yeah, I love it.
You're driven by something other than, I mean, I'm not going to say this isn't a factor. Obviously, none of us are in business to be, nonprofits, but
right.
There's a much more deeply rooted sense of what drives you, what desires you have. You brought up earlier your definition of success, which I think, is a driver that you have clarity on. Well, what does success mean to me?
Yeah.
Legacy, so important. Fighting for something, upholding a standard in a world where the standards seem to be crumbling. These are all themes that pop out to me as I listen to you. I want to thank you. This has been such tremendous value. I appreciate you sharing time with me. How can those listening or watching connect with you and stay connected to you?
So I am entering into social media. So my main platform is LinkedIn, and so I do my best to stay very active on that. So that's probably the best place right now is on LinkedIn for now. We'll see what happens in 2025, but for
when you get your TV show and all these things. Yeah, I got it. I love it. Ryan Rohrman, thank you so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook podcast.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. It's great.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Dealer Playbook podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please subscribe, share, and hit that like button. You can also join us and the DPB community on social media. Check back next week for a new Dealer Playbook episode. Thanks so much for joining.